Welcome to this episode of Critical Conversations. Today, the Outpellet team will talk about and debate professionalism in ag education. What exactly does that look like? Let's join Marshall, Brian, and Kate as they begin that conversation.
Well, welcome back. We are here with our next critical conversation, a conversation that Dr. Shoulders here from Arkansas has worked on a little bit, and I think it's a good conversation on professionalism.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. We also have Dr. Brian Myers from University of Florida who can correct Kate and all her mistakes.
He might know a little bit about the topic, I guess.
And
Maybe.
then
You
myself,
can weigh in, maybe.
which this is fun. I am currently in I am in sandals, shorts, and a moderately unprofessional shirt. So
You're wearing your professional glasses,
but my glasses are professional. I'm a little more professional from like the table up.
which generally how that goes is you don't show everyone.
Oh.
So then they only see, because like sometimes full disclosure, sometimes when I teach my online classes, like I'll have pajama pants on, but no one knows because I'll have like earrings and a nice top, because that's something that you do as a professional.
Well, this idea of are ag teachers professional? What does that look like? What does professionalism look like for an ag teacher? I always struggled with it, to be honest. Going in and out of the shop, and the tie was such a dangerous discussion in the lab. And when we think about being a professional and selling our profession, should we conform to this suit and tie professionalism? Should there be a specific set of professional guidelines? That's our critical conversation today.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
gonna stop you right there.
Okay.
So much about being a professional is actually you're on the inside, right? It's your behavior, and how you think, and some of that. And so really what happens when we talk about dress and why people wear what they do, it actually comes from not that external part, like I'm going to put this on, and almost like wolf in sheep's clothing, I'm going to put this on and people think I look more professional than I actually am. It actually is the opposite, where what you're thinking leads you to behave a certain way in the classroom, right? So, and it's not just the really? So it's things like being prepared so that your technology doesn't go off in the middle of a podcast, things like that.
When you're doing the recording.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but the ideas of being a professional they're not just for teachers. Professionals in any career all follow the same kind of tenets. So you're thinking doctors, lawyers, and there's this discussion among researchers that teachers arguably are professionals. We give them, some of our most precious resources, right? Our kids. Mm-hmm. And so they are professionals. Mm-hmm. The idea is that a professional has to adapt to a situation by being knowledgeable enough in the content to be able to evaluate what's going on and adjust accordingly.
Right.
So oftentimes, if you want to get back to dress, to that kind of more seeable level, oftentimes what that might mean is when I go into a classroom and there are administrators around and I know what they expect, I want to display to them that I am a credible professional because I know what they're wanting and I can adapt to that, as opposed to saying, nope, I'm the ag teacher and this is what ag teachers wear. I'm going to not conform necessarily, but adapt to the situation. So when a student needs a particular thing, I know from the wide array of tools that I have at my disposal, this is the best one, right? Medical professionals do that. We should be doing it too.
Your rant is great.
I'm on you picked a very passionate topic.
But I'm going to come out there and say I've always been the person that I find that dress is kind of that first judgment point.
That's
and
true.
you hear a lot in teacher education that on teaching days, like even here at OSU, there are people that would say, they'll tell me, Dr. Baker, this is a teaching day because I won't have a tie on or I won't be dressed in, the traditional giddy up. I am kind of a little bit of a rebel when it comes to dress.
He seems to take pride in that.
He does.
Well, in all honesty, when I wear a tie and it's a noose around my neck, it's uncomfortable for me. I fidget, I move, I can't get my neck comfortable. It's distracting to me. I can't think and engage as well. So typically I'll wear a tie just because that's the cultural norm, but then I'll loosen it right away so that I can engage adequately. So for me, I would say that dress and appearance, which includes some of how you carry yourself, is that first. People judge you immediately based on that.
That's true.
But I think that's how they form their initial judgment, and then they continue to watch your cues over time. So for example, here on campus, the best professor on campus, his name is Del Fuqua, and he wears Hawaiian shirts and khaki shorts and sandals, and nobody questions his professionalism. So to me, you have to think about all the elements of, I think everyone thinks about dress first, which is why I brought that up. But I think when I watch someone and how they treat a student, and how they handle an IEP meeting, and how they show up to meetings on time, and how they engage in the school community, and they don't just stay walled up in their office. And I think a lot of that...
I can feel myself like putting gloves on.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Boxing gloves.
I'm ready.
Yes, bring it on. I think a lot of that, people judge me early in some of these outward things, but over time, I think people form judgments more on the content, less on the, what's the behaviors and the thoughts in the mind than the dress.
I think so much of it, you look at it and it's however you're dressed. I think you have to be comfortable to a point, figure out where you are. But it's the mindset that you're going to have as a teacher. When you go in there, what are you supposed to be doing as a teacher? How are you going to interact with those students? What is your ultimate goal that you're going to be doing it? And then how do you get better at your craft? How do you figure out what are you trying to do here? To me, that's when we talk about professionalism. That's what it. Unfortunately, attire and dress gets equated with professionalism so much. I think it's a part of it, but I don't think it's the sum total of it. It's what you're looking at here and where you're going and what your mental frame of mind is as you go into that particular thing. And so sometimes, whether or not you wear a tie or not. And I know, back, whenever I was teaching high school, I wore a tie to teach every so often. A lot of times, one was just trying to break some stereotypes into really how I was going to interact and gain some respect with the school. It wasn't every single day, probably a couple of days a week, to do that because they didn't see agriculture education in that particular frame of mind. So, but I also know that there were certain days, and it was kind of funny, on the topics that I didn't like, and I'm interested what you think about it, the topics I didn't like to teach, because we all have our favorites, whether we want to admit it or not. The topics I didn't like to teach, if I wore a tie and more traditional professional thing, I would do a better job of teaching those days, or at least I think I did, than I would on other kind of days, because I'm like, okay, I got to go in and I'm going to focus on, because I know this is going to be a challenge to do here, so I need to put everything I've got into this particular thing. So I don't know if that's just one of my many neuroses that I have, or if there's something behind all that.
Could be likely.
Yeah.
So first, really, with professionalism, that's what we're talking about. It's not how you dress, really. I mean, and as you say, that's a piece of it. And Marshall, I'm going to slam you for a minute, because if you want to actually, instead of going off of what you think and maybe actually going off of research for a second, the research actually shows that people's perceptions of someone kind of plateaus after a minute. You can, within a minute, your ability to gauge someone as a, just to address somebody as a person and think about what they're like, your impressions of them, are increase in accuracy up to a minute, and after that they plateau. So people within a minute can get it pretty well accurate as far as who you are. So dress does come into play with that. But Brian, as you were saying, dress is not, when we're talking about being a professional, we're not talking about dress necessarily. You use that, and many teachers do, you use that as an opportunity to, as you said, break stereotypes and show people that you are a professional. So what it means to be a professional is to be autonomous as a teacher and know that no one knows your craft better than you, but you are still working on that craft as well. No one else could come into your classroom and do what you do as far as teaching kids. Right? So that's the idea of being a professional is, right, think about it in terms of a doctor and how doctors work with their patients, right? It's very, very similar. Now, when you're interacting with those that don't maybe think of you as a professional. You want to put on clothes that let them know that's what I equate with a professional. This is what I equate with a non-professional, and they look now more like a professional to get past some of that. But it's not about clothes. As you said, Marshall, you can be in your, what are those, Chacos?
Chacos.
They look
They're
like
really
generic
comfortable.
Chacos.
No, these are.
They're legit. So anyway, so you can be in those and still be a professional because of how you view the work that you're doing, and over
Well,
time.
and I think for the critical conversation, Kate is actually a really nice person. Just so everybody knows. Like,
Yeah.
Kate is very nice. Okay.
I'm not sounding nice.
Yeah.
No, I'm crying here. Inside. I think the thing on this is I am pushing on it a little because it is a critical conversation.
Yeah.
I think what I draw back from is my time as a secondary principal. I feel like that's where I'm pulling from.
Yeah.
So when I walked the halls of a 900-person school with 60 different, faculty and staff, I would get the questions, Dr. Baker, can I wear shorts? And my response would be, no, I think we really want to put forward. Now, if you have a rationale, you can explain to me that there's a rationale.
Yep.
Well, Dr. Baker, is there a dress code? Well, yeah, if you want me to give you one, but you really don't want me to give you one. You really want to think about that yourself.
Yeah, and
I
that's
think
being
about,
that's being a professional, is
Yeah.
knowing not having to follow the rule of a dress
Yeah.
code, because you are the person that's knowledgeable and professional enough
Yes.
to set your own acceptable, appropriate rules.
And that's really where I come to this. This idea of professionalism is something that I harped on a lot as a principal, because what really annoyed me is when we don't treat teachers like professionals.
Yes.
And I think that conversation goes way beyond clothes. Who cares? But that's a conversation of these are degreed professionals, and I hate it as an ag teacher when I had to ask an assistant somewhere if I could even have a stapler.
Yeah.
I had to beg to make copies.
Yeah.
If I had to make the decision to not wear a tie today, someone should respect that I as a professional can make that decision.
Yes.
But I think in that utopian world, you've got to make those decisions well. So what I think about is the Marzano model of teaching. I think it does a good job. So I'm going to share quickly. Domain 4 of Marzano is where it talks about how I would assess teachers in collegiality and professionalism. That's domain 4. And it's composed of the following elements. Number 1, promoting positive interactions with colleagues. Number 2, promoting positive interactions with students and staff, with students and parents. 3, seeking mentorship for areas of need or interest. Mentoring other teachers and sharing ideas and strategies. Adhering to district and school rules and procedures, and participating in district and school initiatives. I think that really draws me back to dress then becomes encompassed in what are the school agreements that you can live within as a professional of that organization.
There's an aspect of professionalism, though, that goes straight to teaching, right, to what we're doing as teachers. And oftentimes, I'd be curious to see what you guys think about this. We get these red wagons, right, where a district pays for these, right, like case curriculum. Mm-hmm. That takes away the idea that a teacher is a professional. You are not capable of making decisions on how to teach, so we're going to give it to you. All you have to do is read what's on here.
Yeah.
Gloves are on. I completely disagree.
Okay.
I think the state has provided you objectives, and your task is to deliver those objectives. And what you're a master of, the art and science of delivering content to meet objectives. So the objectives have been given to you by an outside entity. And I hesitate with that because I think part of being a professional is, as an ag teacher, to say you're going to create every single element on your own. I think part of being a professional is learning to find, identify, evaluate curriculum, modify the curriculum.
Yeah.
But I don't want. I would argue strongly against not. Part of being a professional is being a collaborative purchaser of materials and evaluator of materials, and then modifying those. I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you're trying to believe that professionalism is creating from scratch.
No, I don't think creating from scratch. I'm talking about the ones where they say, like whatever that thing is, you've got kids in school now where they're doing weird math
Right.
or whatever it is, where they say, you will teach this way. It's not, here's what they need to learn. It's, you will teach it this way because you are incapable of coming
Yeah.
up with an effective way
Right.
to teach it.
So as a principal, what I would say, I hold some things tightly as a principal and some things loosely. I hold tightly that you teach the content and your kids are achieving the objectives. That's what I hold tightly.
Yeah.
I hold loosely how you deliver the content. That
Yeah.
is your
Which I think-
professional obligation.
Right, which
Right.
helps establish them as professionals, but oftentimes I think that doesn't happen.
Well, I think that's the idea too, because we're not here just pounding out widgets on an assembly line. I think we have to, and the teacher has to see themselves in a way that I have the authority. I look at my classroom and I know I need to present in this sort of way to connect with these students, and with this student I'm going to have to do this. I know this student had a rough day yesterday, or I know that he had a problem first period, so I got to do this with this person.
Yeah.
They've got to be able to make that on the fly and really use their own knowledge and experience that they have to be more and more effective to do that. And I'm with you. I think if you got to be able to find the right tools you need to manage those sort of things. But I think we have to be careful as we're developing curriculum and lesson plans that we share with folks is we let folks know here is a starting place. Here is one way to do it, not the way to do it.
Yeah.
And you as a teacher and a professional need to make those changes to make it work for you. And I think whenever we try to get education into widget making and saying every teacher in this grade or every ag teacher who teaches agri-science foundations in the state of Florida, this is where you're on day 47, you're going to be doing this lesson in this particular way. It's going to take you exactly this long to do it and move on. I think that's going to be a challenge. Because when we look at other kind of careers we consider professions, we give them, here's what I want you to do. You're a lawyer. I want you to go do these things. You go figure out how to make those things done. As long as you're meeting the objective. You're a physician. You go do this particular thing. You figure out how to make that thing work rather than follow exactly what you have to do.
See, but where do we teach that to teachers, that they are professionals? See, I think we've got so many teachers in the field that because they're administrators end up giving those kind of red wagon, fully encompassed, you're going to teach it this way, widget making. And we, I think, don't do a good enough job in higher ed and teacher prep in helping them establish themselves as self-identifying as a professional, and they don't say, wait, hold up, I know what I'm doing here, right? I've got these muscles already built. So instead, they say, well, okay, and then I think that's where teachers end up struggling, is because they don't feel like professionals. And I keep wondering, that's what, right, you said you always think about experiential learning. That's what I'm always thinking about, is how can we help make teachers understand that they are professionals and feel like legitimate professionals, so that they can then flex those muscles and say, I know exactly how to teach this, and be confident about it. I think that will increase job satisfaction.
And I think part of that too is that always growing and getting better. We pick on doctors and lawyers a lot, but I have a lot of friends that are physicians and lawyers, and they're continually reading what's going on, how do I get better, what's the new medical treatment, what's the new diagnosis, what's the new way, that new laws are coming out, the way to practice this kind of stuff. I think one of the keys for a teacher is we're always having to get better. What's the new teaching methods that we're going to use? What's the new thing we're learning about how to work with classroom management, wherever this goes. But then also, going back to what you're talking about, Marshall, how do we mentor? How do we help that next folks? Because I think any of us that have been in a mentoring relationship, we know when we mentor somebody else, we get better at what we're working with that person on as well.
But you have to reflect. You can't just go to a professional development and say, okay, well, now I'm going to learn about these reading strategies. You have to already know, here is where I help students best, here is where I had some struggles, and that is why I'm here, right? Not just to get the PD points.
Well, I think it's a lot of it. I think, and again, as a high school teacher, I fell into this trap too. We don't take control of our professional development. We're like, I'm going to show up to the Ag Teachers Association conference every summer. I'm going to take whatever workshops show up there, and they're going to drive my professional development. I didn't sit down and say, wow, I've got this, I need this, that, and the other thing, and then go seek these things out, whether it be a workshop or whether it be, I got to pick up the phone and call Marshall Baker, who's 3 counties over at a different school, to do this, and say, hey, how do you do this to make these kind of things happen? And I think that's the big piece, is part of it at least, is to have teachers take control of their own professional development and see what they need to be doing to continue to get better. Whether they're year 4 or year 34, how do you continue to get better?
Yeah.
Well, and it's been really fun. So everybody on the outside may not know, but Dr. Shoulders is really passionate about helping the community and the world understand the professionalism that exists within our teachers. And ag teachers, they of anybody in a school are professionals. And I think, Kate's done a lot of research on that. So it's been fun to kind of wrestle and throw some rocks at you.
Yeah.
But man, you can see Kate's passion for we are professionals and we've got to sell that message and give ourselves the best chance we have. And, this idea of we've got to see ourselves as growing, changing, developing, and practicing teachers. I think that gets us into that place of professionalism.
I appreciate y'all sparring with me. I'll go home and cry about it on the inside, but.
Well, we love these critical conversations. What do you guys think about dress? What is your favorite attire for a day at school?
No, here's what I want to know.
Okay.
Because you keep bringing this back. Okay, so like with experiential learning, if someone talks, right, Marshall's thing is experiential learning. And
how do you
if I talk to you about SAEs, right, and I'm like, so experiential learning, tell me all about SAEs, and you're cringing on the inside, that's what I'm doing.
Is dress.
So
again, it's all about dress.
What I would love to know is how professional, if you can do teacher compare yourself to a lawyer as far as your professionalism? Do you compare yourself to a doctor? Because you are and you should be. And if you can help me figure out how to get teachers there, I think that would help with this whole idea of, number one, communities not valuing teachers as they should be, administrators not giving teachers the wiggle room they need to really teach their students well, the way they know they need to be taught, because that's why we lose teachers. They don't feel valued, and they don't feel valued because they're not treated as professionals.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to work on that for the next 30 years.
Great. And in the meantime, all you teachers out there that are living this every day, jump in on this argument. Jump in this critical conversation and talk about this professionalism. And help Kate understand maybe what your struggles are out there, and we can help add those to the list.
Yep.
Appreciate you all from 439 in Ag Hall at Oklahoma State University. Brian, Kate, and Marshall, we're signing off. Until next time.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Owl Pellets. Please visit our webpage for more information on this topic and to learn more about all of our guests. Be sure to follow Owl Pellets on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It would also be great for you to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, we ask that you please take a moment and comment on our podcast so others can find it as well. So for Kate and Marshall, this is Brian here by the Owl Pellet saying thanks, and we look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Owl Pellets, Tips for Ag Teachers.